She dropped the glass. 50 powerful guests turned. And Raymond Cole crossed that marble floor in 6 steps, not to help her, but to silence her. Because the woman in the gray uniform wasn't his housekeeper. She was his mother. For 11 years, he hid her in a back room while she covered her walls with newspaper clippings of his success. But one 12-year-old girl was watching from the staircase. And she would change everything. Hey family, welcome to my story channel. Please subscribe and give this video a like, it truly means the world to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thank you so much for the support. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. The glass shattered at exactly 8:47 p.m. Everyone froze. 50 of the most powerful people in the country, senators, CEOs, celebrities, turned their heads toward the kitchen doorway where an old woman in a gray uniform stood, surrounded by broken crystal and spilled red wine, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with horror. The mansion went completely silent. Raymond Cole moved faster than anyone had ever seen a man in a tailored suit move. He crossed the marble floor in 6 steps, grabbed the old woman firmly by the arm, and spoke through clenched teeth, his smile never leaving his face. "Go to your room, Miriam. I'll handle this." The old woman, Miriam, 59 years old, small framed with silver threading through her dark hair, looked up at him. Something passed between them, something old and painful and wordless. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just wanted to bring out the... Go. Now." And she went, head down, gray uniform disappearing through the service door like a ghost swallowed by the wall. Raymond turned back to his guests, laughing smoothly. "Forgive us. New staff." He snapped his fingers and 2 actual staff members appeared instantly to clean the mess. The music resumed. The champagne flowed. The night continued. Nobody asked about the old woman again. But one person had seen everything. 12-year-old Claire Cole sat at the top of the grand staircase, hidden behind the marble banister in her pajamas, eyes sharp and missing absolutely nothing. She had seen the way her father grabbed Miriam's arm. She had seen the look on Miriam's face. Not the embarrassment of a clumsy servant, but something far deeper. Something that looked like a wound being reopened. Claire pressed her small hand flat against her chest and stayed very still. She had also seen one other thing. Something her father didn't know she'd seen. Earlier that evening, before the guests arrived, she had wandered into the kitchen looking for a snack. Miriam was standing at the window humming softly, folding napkins with the practiced hands of a woman who had spent a lifetime making order out of chaos. Claire had watched her for a moment, the careful, rhythmic folding, the quiet dignity, the slight smile on her lips as she hummed. There was something about the way Miriam moved in this house. Not like staff, like someone who belonged here deeply and painfully. "Miriam," Claire had asked, leaning against the counter, "how long have you worked here?" Miriam had looked at her with those warm, tired eyes. She smiled, but it didn't reach all the way up. "Long enough," she said softly. "Long enough, my dear." Now, sitting on the staircase in the dark, watching her father work the room below like a king at court, Claire replayed that answer in her head. Long enough. It didn't sound like an employee's answer. It sounded like a mother's. If this story already has you curious, stay right here because what you're about to discover will completely change everything you think you know about Raymond Cole. Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Raymond Cole at 35 was everything the world called a success. He had built his real estate empire from nothing, or so the magazine said. The Forbes profile called him self-made. The interviews all used the same word, driven. He wore it like a badge. What the magazines never mentioned was the small town of Kachura, a dusty, forgotten place 6 hours from the city that Raymond had not visited in 11 years. And they certainly never mentioned what or who he left there. He poured himself a drink after the last guest left. Diana, his wife, floated past him in a silk robe, 32 years old and effortlessly beautiful, already reviewing tomorrow's social calendar on her phone. "That went well," she said without looking up. "The senator loved the salmon." Miriam almost ruined everything. Raymond said quietly. Diana looked up then, her expression carefully neutral. She just dropped a glass. She shouldn't have been out there at all. He loosened his tie. I told you to make sure she stayed in the back during events. Diana set her phone down slowly. Raymond. She lives here. She works here, he corrected. And the way he said it flat, final, without flinching made Diana look at him the way she sometimes did. Like she was searching for someone she used to know. She's Diana. His voice dropped. We've talked about this. Silence settled between them like a third person in the room. Upstairs, in the small room at the far end of the west corridor past the laundry, past the storage, at the very edge of the house, Miriam sat on the edge of her narrow bed. She was still in the gray uniform. Her hands were still trembling slightly. On the wall above her bed were newspaper clippings. Dozens of them. Neat, careful, yellowing at the edges. Raymond Cole closes biggest property deal of the decade. Young billionaire transforms city skyline. The man who built an empire at 30. She touched one of them gently. A photo of Raymond at an award ceremony. Sharp in his tuxedo, laughing with the governor. She smiled. And then, very quietly, she cried. Not from bitterness. That was the heartbreaking part. She cried the way a woman cries when she is proud of something she is not allowed to claim. 2 floors above her, Raymond stood at his bedroom window staring at the city. The empire. The skyline he'd built. And somewhere, buried under all that steel and glass and carefully constructed success, a memory flickered. A 2-room house. Candlelight. The smell of his mother's sewing fabric and warmth and safety. He poured another drink and killed the memory before it could finish forming. It started with a missing earring. Claire was looking for her gold stud earring on the 3rd morning after the gala when she wandered down the wrong corridor, past the laundry room, all the way to the small door at the end of the west wing. She knocked because she was 12 and still had manners. Come in, said Miriam's voice. Claire pushed the door open and stopped. The room was small. A single bed. A wooden chair. A narrow window that looked out at the back garden wall, not the beautiful rose garden that Diana tended, but the plain concrete wall behind it. And the clippings. All over the wall. Her father's face, her father's name, her father's awards, dozens of them, arranged with the kind of care that took love and a lot of time. You collect these? Claire stepped inside slowly. Miriam was sitting by the window with sewing in her lap, a habit Claire now realized she'd never thought to question. She looked up and something flickered in her expression. Not panic. More like quiet resignation. I like to keep track of important things, Miriam said simply. Claire moved closer to the wall. She read the headlines one by one. Then she turned around. Miriam. Her voice was careful. 12 years old but careful. Are you related to my dad? Miriam's hands went still on the fabric. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. What makes you ask that? Miriam said softly. The way you look at him. Claire sat on the edge of the bed uninvited. The way only children and people who feel at home can. It's not how Margaret looks at him. Margaret was the head housekeeper. It's different. It's like how my mom looks at me when she thinks I'm not watching. Miriam looked at this child, this 12-year-old girl with her father's sharp eyes and something else entirely. Something that skipped a generation and came from somewhere older, and she made a decision. She reached under her mattress and pulled out a photograph. She held it out to Claire without a word. Claire took it, stared at it. A young woman, maybe 24, 25, sitting in a small wooden chair, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. The young woman was laughing at something off camera. She was beautiful, and even though the photo was old and slightly faded, Claire recognized the eyes immediately. They were the same eyes that looked back at her from Miriam's face right now. Claire's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's you, she whispered. And that's... Yes, Miriam said quietly. Claire looked at the wall of newspaper clippings, then back at Miriam, then at the tiny room with the concrete view. Does he know? She asked. I mean, does he remember? And Miriam, 59 years old, who had folded more pain into herself than most people carry in a lifetime, looked out the narrow window and said very gently, He remembers. He just decided that remembering was too expensive. Claire didn't go to her father first. She went to her mother. She found Diana in the sunroom, laptop open, green juice half finished, the picture of a controlled, organized life. "Mom!" Claire stood in the doorway. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Diana looked up. She read her daughter's face the way mothers do, the whole story in 3 seconds, and her composure shifted in a way Claire had never seen before. "Sit down," Diana said. She closed the laptop. "Did you know?" Claire asked. She didn't even finish the question. Diana was quiet for a long moment. She turned her green juice glass slowly on the table. Around and around. "I found out 2 years after we got married," she said finally. "Raymond told me there was a woman, a relative, that she needed somewhere to stay, that she preferred to keep busy, preferred to work." She paused. "I believed him because I wanted to. She's his mother, Mom. I know. She's sleeping in that tiny room at the back of the house, in a gray uniform, with newspaper clippings of Dad on the wall because that's the only way she's allowed to celebrate him." Diana closed her eyes. "I know, Claire." Then why? Claire's voice cracked. She was 12, and 12-year-olds feel injustice in their bones before they have the words for it. "Why didn't you do something?" Diana opened her eyes. And for the first time, Claire saw something behind her mother's polished exterior that she didn't expect. Guilt. Raw and unresolved. "I tried. Once." Diana's voice dropped. When you were about 4. I told Raymond it had gone on long enough. That we needed to end it." She exhaled. "He didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. And then one morning he came downstairs and acted like the conversation had never happened. So you just let it go." "I made a terrible choice," Diana said quietly. "I chose my marriage over doing what was right. And I have to live with that." The sunroom was very still. Outside, through the glass, they could both see Miriam in the garden moving slowly along the flower beds, touching the petals softly, face tilted toward the morning sun. She looked peaceful. She had mastered the art of looking peaceful. "What are we going to do?" Claire asked. Diana looked at her daughter, then at the woman in the garden. "I don't know," she admitted. "But it can't go on like this." Claire stood up. Her jaw was set in a way that was entirely her father's. "I do know," she said, "and I'm going to handle it." Diana reached for her hand. "Claire." But Claire was already walking toward the garden. Raymond was in his home office when Claire walked in. She didn't knock. She crossed the room, stood directly in front of his desk, and placed the old photograph down in front of him, the young woman with the baby in the yellow blanket. Raymond froze. Not for a second. For a long, heavy, terrible moment. The kind of freeze that tells you everything. "I found it in her room," Claire said. "The room at the back, with the concrete view, and the newspaper clippings." Her voice was steady, 12 years old and steady as stone. "The ones she put up because she's not allowed to tell anyone she's proud of you." Raymond didn't move. "Dad." Her voice finally cracked on that word. Just slightly. "She's your mother." Raymond stood up slowly, walked to the window, his back to her. "Claire, there are things about this world that you're too young to understand. Don't." Her voice sharpened. "Don't talk to me like I'm little. You hid your own mother. In this house. Like she's something to be ashamed of." He turned around then. His face was complicated, a map of emotions fighting each other for control. "You don't understand what I came from," he said, his voice low. "Where I grew up. What people would think." "I don't care what people think." Claire's composure broke open. "She sold things for you, Dad. She told me. Her sewing machine. Her earrings. Everything. So you could have a winter coat when you went to university. And now she washes dishes in your kitchen in a gray uniform." Raymond looked like he had been hit. "She told you that?" "She didn't have to. I could see it." Claire picked the photograph back up, held it against her chest. "Do you know what she has in that room?" "Nothing. A small bed, a wooden chair, and a wall covered in pictures of you." Her voice broke completely now. The tears came. "She's in there celebrating you, Dad. while you're out here pretending she doesn't exist." The room was silent. Raymond sat back down slowly. He put his elbows on the desk and pressed both hands over his face. His shoulders always squared, always straight, curved inward. From behind his hands, a sound came out of him. Something pressed and broken. Not quite a sob, but close. "I know," he said, muffled, barely audible. "Then why?" Claire whispered. He lowered his hands. His eyes were red. Raymond Cole, 35, billionaire, untouchable, looked at his 12-year-old daughter with an expression she had never seen on his face before. He looked lost. "Because I was afraid," he said, "that everything I built would fall apart if people knew where I really came from." Claire looked at him for a long moment. Then she placed the photograph gently on his desk, turned around, and walked out. Raymond didn't sleep. He lay in the dark next to Diana, who pretended to be asleep, who was not asleep, and stared at the ceiling until 4 a.m. Then he got up. He found Miriam where he somehow knew he would find her. The garden. She was always in the garden before sunrise. He had noticed it for years and never asked why. She was sitting on the old wooden bench near the far wall, wrapped in a shawl, face turned toward the first gray light of morning. Her eyes were closed. He stood a few feet away and just looked at her. 59 years old. The same hands. A little more silver in her hair. A little slower in her movements. But the same woman who had sat by candlelight sewing while a small boy fell asleep in her lap. He had not allowed himself to really see her in so long that looking at her now felt like pressing on a bruise he had forgotten was there. "I wondered when you'd come," she said without opening her eyes. He sat beside her on the bench. Neither of them spoke for a while. "Mama," he said finally. The word came out raw. It had been years since he'd said it out loud. Tasted like guilt and childhood at the same time. Miriam opened her eyes. "I put your articles on the wall," she said. "Did Claire tell you? Every time a new one came out, I'd have someone print it for me. I couldn't work the internet myself." She smiled a little. "Margaret helped me sometimes. She never asked questions." "Mama, I'm not angry with you," she interrupted, gently but firmly, the way she had always corrected him. "I need you to know that first." He looked at her. "You should be. Maybe." She folded her hands in her lap. "But anger is heavy, Raymond. I'm too old to carry things that are heavy. I made you wear a uniform in my own house." His voice broke on the last word. "I told people you were staff." He stopped, pressed his fist to his mouth. "You were afraid," she said simply. "That's not an excuse." "No," she agreed. "It isn't." She looked at him steadily. "But it is a reason. And I know my son. I know when fear has a hold of him." She paused. "I just didn't know the fear would last this long." Raymond leaned forward and put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. Miriam reached over, placed her hand on his back, the way she had always done, when he was 9 and had nightmares, when he was 14 and failed his exams, when the world was too big and he was too small. "I kept every article," she said softly, "every single one, because no matter what name you gave me in this house, I knew who you were." She rubbed small circles on his back. "You are my son. That was always enough for me." He turned and looked at her. "It should not have been enough," he said. She held his gaze. "No," she said. "It should not have been." It started with a photo. Someone at the gala had taken it on their phone, the old woman in the gray uniform being grabbed by the arm, her face down, Raymond's jaw tight. They had sat on it for 3 days and then posted it with a simple caption. "Is this Raymond Cole's mother?" Thread below. By morning it was everywhere. Raymond's phone lit up at 6 a.m. like a fire alarm. His publicist called 7 times. His business partner sent a 3-word message. "Call me now." 2 board members sent formal emails with words like image and optics and damage control. Diana stood in the kitchen holding her tablet, face pale. Miriam sat at the kitchen table drinking tea, reading a small devotional book, either unaware or magnificently unbothered. "Raymond," Diana said when he walked in. She turned the tablet toward him. He read the headline, Billionaire Raymond Cole's mother living as maid in his mansion, sources confirm. He sat down at the table, across from his mother, next to his wife. Claire appeared in the doorway, school bag on her shoulder, and stopped when she felt the weight of the room. "Dad?" she said quietly. Raymond looked at his family. His mother with her tea and her quiet dignity. His wife with her guilt-shadowed eyes. His daughter with her 12-year-old moral clarity that cut cleaner than any boardroom sword. His publicist called again. He rejected the call. "Raymond, we need to put out a statement," Diana said. "The board is going to—" "I'm not putting out a statement," he said. Everyone looked at him. "I'm not managing this." He set his phone face down on the table. "I'm not spinning it. I'm not repackaging it." He looked at Miriam. "I'm going to tell the truth." Miriam lowered her devotional book. "Are you sure?" she asked. "No," he said honestly. "But I'm doing it anyway." He called his publicist back. "Set up a press conference," he said. "Tomorrow morning. No prepared speech. No PR filtering." He paused. "And call whoever handles the East Wing renovations. I want that back room cleared out by end of week." Diana's hand covered her mouth. Claire slowly sat down at the table. And Miriam, 59 years old, gray uniformed, unannounced, unacknowledged for 11 years, reached across the table and covered her son's hand with hers. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The press conference lasted 41 minutes. Raymond stood at the podium without notes. No publicist at his shoulder. No carefully rehearsed lines. He told the truth. All of it. He talked about Katura, the small town nobody knew, the two-room house, the candlelight. He talked about his mother's sewing machine and her gold earrings. He talked about the bus station where she waved goodbye and he looked back once. He talked about the first lie, 31, to a business partner, the woman who helped surround the house. He talked about how that one lie became a structure he built his life around until the structure was load-bearing and he was too afraid to dismantle it. The room was very quiet. "I told myself I was protecting her," he said. "I told myself it was temporary. That one day when things were more settled, when I was more secure, I would fix it." His voice stayed level. "Barely. But there is no settled. There is no secure. There is just the choice you make today and the one you make tomorrow. And I made the wrong one every day for 11 years. He looked directly into the cameras. "My mother's name is Miriam Cole. She is 59 years old. She is a seamstress from Katura. She raised me alone on almost nothing, and she gave everything she had so I could stand in rooms like this one." He paused. "She deserves to stand in them with me. She always did." 3 rows from the front, a journalist was crying. She wasn't the only one. At home, Claire sat on the sofa next to Miriam, watching the press conference on the television. When it ended, Claire looked at her grandmother. "How do you feel?" she asked. Miriam thought about it, genuinely thought about it, like something that was holding its breath. She said, "Just breathed out." Claire leaned her head against Miriam's shoulder. Miriam put her arm around her. 3 weeks later, Miriam moved into the largest guest suite in the East Wing. It had tall windows that overlooked the rose garden. Real ones. Diana had chosen the curtains herself, warm gold, the color of morning. On the wall, with proper frames this time, they hung the newspaper clippings. All of them. And at the center, in the largest frame, the old photograph. The young woman in the wooden chair, holding a baby in a yellow blanket, laughing at something off camera. The foundation launched 6 months later. Its mission was simple: supporting women from rural communities with skills, funding, and visibility. They named it the Miriam Cole Foundation. At the launch event, Raymond stood at the podium again. This time Miriam sat in the front row, not in a gray uniform, but in a bright hand-sewn dress she had made herself. Beside her sat Claire in her best shoes, beaming. Raymond looked at his mother before he began to speak. She gave him the small nod she had always given him. "Go on. You can do it." He smiled. "The real one. The one from before. My mother once told me," he said into the microphone, "that roots don't disappear. You can build over them, build around them, pretend they're not there. He paused. But they're always there, holding everything up whether you acknowledge them or not. He looked at her. This foundation exists because I spent too long pretending mine didn't. I will spend the rest of my life making sure other people remember theirs. The room applauded. Miriam did not applaud. She pressed both hands flat against her chest, over her heart, and closed her eyes. And for the first time in 11 years, she looked exactly like what she had always been. Not staff, not a secret, not a footnote in someone else's success story. A mother, always a mother. We've come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.